us and for your gracious welcome. And I'd also like to thank, we've got some folks in the back and out in the lobby who are important in our community, and some of you may find that their services are helpful. We have the Department of Veterans Affairs from the Oakland office. We have the Veterans Administration Northern California Healthcare. The California Employment and Development Department, EDD. CADCAP and the Area Agency on Aging, and I believe they're out in the foyer. Now, if you bear with me, I'd like to ask Sam Gonzalez to come up. Sam is a former Vietnam veteran, such as myself, and I've asked him to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Sam, thank you. Thank you for your service. Sam was in the first CAF in Vietnam. So thank you. And where's Christopher Cabaldon? You guys will come up here, and we're going to do this together. We're really fortunate to have our state senator, Christopher Cabaldon. So we've done this, as I think a lot of you know, in my offices as well. I've co-located with our senators and with our assembly member. And it makes it really good for delivering constituent services. If someone walks into my office and it's a state legislative deal, we can walk them across the hall to Christopher or to Cecilia, and it's worked out real well. And so for these town hall meetings, I think it's important because some people might have questions about state issues. So it's great to have him join us. And I think it's also important, and we're lucky to be able to get to know him a little bit. He's first term in the state senate, and I'll introduce him in a minute. But Christopher, thank you very, very much. So I do a lot of town halls, as you know. I come home throughout the year, and I do, oftentimes when I'm home, I do town hall meetings. And I had a series in this district work period. For members of Congress, it's not ski week, it's a district work period. And a lot of us are home in our districts, and I scheduled 3 town hall meetings, and we also did a rally on Monday, and I've been doing some Zoom town hall meetings as well. Now, I figured it would be pretty much what's going on in Congress, what I'm doing. One of your questions I'd be happy to answer. But I am under no illusion that this is going to be a standard town hall meeting. I've been meeting all week with community organizations throughout our district, with individuals, with local governments, with law enforcement, and I'm hearing the same concerns every place I go. My phone's ringing off the hook, my email runneth over, and people are concerned. And I share your concern. People are angry. I'm angry too. I went to Congress, you sent me to Congress, to get things done. Not to create chaos, not to create disruption, and most certainly not to break the law. And these are very, very odd times, because what's going on in Congress right now should frighten everybody. And I made a list of just a couple of things that we should be worried about given all of these cuts and this DOGE business that's going on. We're losing money for fire breaks, and I don't think you have to live in Pasadena or Altadena to know how important those are. We lived through that. 3 fire seasons in a row. We lost thousands of home lives, and the economic hit in our area was tremendous. Preventive fire break work is important. We're losing firefighters. You know, we had a big problem with that in the 17 fires. The federal firefighters could make more money flipping burgers than they could putting their life on the line, keeping our properties and our lives safe. We plussed up the money to be able to get these firefighters from the Fed. That's all been frozen. Funding for Alzheimer's, cancer, spina bifida, and smoke tank, all been cut. And our district has billions of dollars in research funding that comes just to our district because of the University of California at Davis. They're doing incredible work over there in regard to mental health, memory loss, cancer research, and I'm hearing from people who are in trials, cancer research trials, who've been cut off, just done. And that's just wrong. And it doesn't create a safe environment for any of us. Staffing at the VA, Social Security, both under fire. We hear time and again stories that we heard. I heard one tonight, and I asked the individual, please write that down and send it to my office so we know the full impact. Someone from Napa, 20 years in the intelligence service, 20 years. And remember, I served 8 years on the intelligence committee. I know what kind of work they do. I'm a combat veteran. I know how important that work is. She was assigned to USAID, and she was given 24-hour notice that she was fired, and she had 24 hours to get everything she owned packed up and out of there. I'm here to tell you, you can't pack up everything you own and get it out of there in 24 hours. That's not the way that you treat career employees that put their life on their line for our country, and it's just not something you do that makes our country more safe. It makes our country less safe. And I can go on and on with the stories just from our district that I've heard, and it's frightening. Much of it's illegal. Much of it's dangerous. It hurts us from an economic perspective, and it hurts us from a national security perspective, and it's not right. Everybody I meet with says, what are you doing about it? Yeah. What are you doing? And I bet there's more than one person here who has that same question tonight. So I'm going to tell you, my focus is fighting this in the legislature, fighting it in the courts, and fighting it in the court of public opinion. Now, I don't think you have to be a political science major to know the math doesn't look good for us in the Congress. We're in the minority. The Republicans have the majority in the House, the Republicans have the majority in the Senate, and the Republicans have the White House. So that's an uphill struggle. But our efforts have put a lot of focus on some of these issues that really put us all in danger. And it has had an impact. For instance, with the combination of the Court of Public Opinion and the work that we did in the legislature, all those cuts to the researchers researching bird flu, which is the reason you can't get eggs if you can, you mortgage your house to buy them, they were all brought back. One of the other screw-ups that they did when they did this arbitrary firing of people, they fired all the nuclear safety engineers. We were able to bring that to the attention of the media, bring it to the attention of the public, and they've walked that back as well. And in the courts, there's some 90 lawsuits that have been filed. And we're winning a bunch of those. We won't win them all, but we'll win a bunch of them. The fact of the matter is, nobody who's an outside contractor with a bunch of young interns, entry-level employees has any business knowing your most private information. In the IRS space, if someone leaks your private information, that's punishable by 5 years in prison. 5 years in prison. And if you recall, it wasn't too long ago when somebody, who was a contractor, was caught leaking tax returns to a former president. Right now, he's in federal prison, serving a 5-year term. And it's serious enough that in the last Congress, we expanded that from $10,000 fine and 5 years in prison to a $250,000 fine and 10 years in prison. There's a reason why your medical records are your business and your healthcare provider's business. There's laws that prohibit people from sharing that information. My wife was a nurse at the St. Lena Hospital where I was born. And I saw somebody the other day and I said, "How you doing?" And he said, "How am I doing? You know, I just got out of surgery." I said, I had no idea. He said, "Well, Jan recovered me." I said, "Well, Jan can't tell me. You know, laws that prohibit her from telling me about your health care information." And there's reasons to do that. You'd be in jeopardy with your employer, all kinds of problems associated with that. And it shouldn't happen. So these lawsuits are important. And the fact that every town hall that I have scheduled this week is maxed out in attendance, that tells me that the court of public opinion is focused and they're not liking what they're seeing. So thank you for being here. Look forward to your questions and look forward to hearing any impact these cuts and these threats are having on any, have had, or are having on any of you. And now I'd like to introduce Christopher Cabaldon, our state senator. And this is personal for me. You've got my old Senate seat. You are my state senator from my hometown in my hometown. And I can't think of a better person to do it. Christopher and I go back a long way. We worked on policy together in the California State Legislature. I represented his hometown of West Sacramento in the U.S. Congress when he was the mayor. He was the longest-serving mayor in the history of West Sacramento. And I don't know how familiar any of you are with West Sacramento, but I can tell you, in my early days in the state Senate, there was some questionable parts to that town. This guy took over, and it is incredible. He focused on economic development. He focused on public safety. He focused on housing. And he just has done a remarkable job. That city is a textbook perfect example of how you should run a city. So when he signed up to run for that Senate seat, I can tell you I was glad, and I'm even more happy that happier, I guess, that you won that seat and the great job you're doing. So give it up for Christopher today.
Good evening, everyone. I was sworn into office on December 6th. Many of you were there. And I knew something was going to be different than what I had thought I would be working on. We spent the campaign talking about our work to build more housing and to protect our habitat. Of course, that meant our job, all of our jobs changed in that moment, in both of those moments. And so I thought also, my first town hall with Congressman Thompson, I'll come prepared to talk about my exciting legislative program about schools and insurance and education and all the other things we care about. I'm happy to, if questions come up about it, to engage in those as well. But I will say that the very first vote I took was in the Budget Committee, which was to appropriate money to begin, before the swearing in of the new president, the litigation that we knew was going to be needed. I will tell you, when we voted on that, and the floor was a completely partisan vote, and our colleagues on the other side of the aisle said, you're overreacting, we should wait to see what happens, are there more important things to do than this? You're being hysterical about this, nothing's going to go wrong. But even before January 20th, the week before, we were starting to get reports that rogue Border Patrol agents, in anticipation of a new president, were patrolling for deportation in Merced, in Bakersfield. And if you don't know California geography, those are not on the border. They are not within the zone of the Border Patrol. And it became immediately clear what many of us already suspected, but maybe there's a part of us that always wants to believe that institutions will be strong, that our norms, that our long-standing norms about governance and democracy and the rule of law would hold. But even before the swearing in, we were seeing rampant illegal activity. And so we voted to do this anyway. Thankfully, we are in the majority, a clear majority in the California legislature. And we appropriate money for two things. For the Attorney General to file litigation. He now leads most of the Attorney Generals in the country, filing at least one lawsuit a day, using those funds. And all the things that Congressman Thompson talked about. So we can file litigation about the threats to withdraw the grant funds, the threats, the actions to condition money for schools on DEI, money for healthcare on limiting reproductive freedom, money for schools and erasing the existence of LGBTQ kids. Down the line, we've been swinging every single day, and we probably will do that for much of the year. Because litigation is a central part of a strategy in a country founded on the rule of law and under our Constitution, and California must lead the way. We also provided money for community groups, legal aid groups in particular, to be able to initiate litigation on behalf of people that being represented by government wasn't in their best interest, whether it was undocumented immigrants or others who needed to be able to tell their stories to the court and be the lead plaintiffs and be prepared. So we appropriated money for that at the same time that we allocated $2.5 billion for the Los Angeles wildfire cleanup and response at the first stages. Now, as we're looking ahead, what I want to say is what I think the governor was saying at the very beginning of the administration, which was that California is strong. We are the 5th largest economy in the world, and we will make sure that we protect everyone, and that we will make sure nothing goes wrong. Now, a month and a half into it, we can't make the same promise. And I'll tell you why. The Congressman Thompson articulated a couple of the threats. I want to bring them home to California as well. The tariffs, or what we would call the taxes on construction materials from Canada, for example. The deportations and the number of workers in California that are not showing up to work because they're afraid. In wine, in agriculture. In Los Angeles, 1 out of every 3 construction workers is undocumented. So the economic impacts, the tax impacts of that kind of just those actions alone are enormous for the state budget. You might have heard last year we had one of the worst state budgets in a while, following years and years of big gigantic surpluses. Well, this year it wasn't supposed to be so bad, because at the last minute we got a bunch of money in that we didn't think was coming, or we didn't know was coming. So this year wasn't going to be a deficit year. But you know why that money came in? Last year was a big AI frenzy with ChatGPT coming out and everyone querying ChatGPT to write their school papers and to write their thank you cards and what have you. But so NVIDIA and a couple of other companies with a large stake in AI made a huge amount of money. And the way our state budget works is when rich people, very, very, very rich people, make money on the stock market, then that's the biggest driver of how our revenues go in California state government. So when we started the year, the governor said we have a balanced budget to present, mostly because of NVIDIA. But after the inauguration, NVIDIA's stock took a $500 billion sum. $500 billion. So we know the next time we see our tax revenues, they're going to be lower than we thought they were going to be when we were projecting our deficits from last year. So we have the stock market, we have the tariffs and the deportations, we have Medi-Cal. 1 out of every 3 Californians is served by Medi-Cal, of all ages. 1 out of every 3. It's the most important program we have in California for access to health care. And I say 1 out of every 3 is served by Medi-Cal, but it's very likely that the health clinic that you use, the hospital systems that we depend on, whether it's Queen or Kaiser or wherever else, that Medi-Cal is an important part of the mix. And if 1/3 of the patients are gone from my hospital or my clinic, its ability to serve me, even with my own private insurance, is also going to be in jeopardy. So when we say folks on Medi-Cal are under threat, all of us are under threat because it's the basic foundation of our healthcare system. So the impact of a reduction in Medi-Cal funding or of requirements that we not serve large populations of people, and I do mean undocumented immigrants, but I also mean children getting mental care services, which we had to get special approval from the federal government. There's all kinds of Californians that are going to be hit by this, and so will the state budget, because Medi-Cal is such a significant part of our work. We have the LA fire with the Speaker of the House and others threatening to put conditions on any relief dollars in order to help us in the way that we're helping Kentucky right now, and we have always, as neighbors in the United States, helped each other. And if those conditions become too untenable, then that will put additional pressure on California's budget. So I was appointed to the Budget Committee at my own request. I was given the Budget Committee, but it turns out not very many people wanted to be on it. This is the worst, this may be the worst budget in many, many decades in California. Not just because of the severity, but because there's just a radical uncertainty about what's happening. So I say this not to add one more thing for us to be depressed and upset about, but just to understand that there isn't any one person. It's not the governor, it's not the House minority leader. There's no one person coming in to save us. That all of us have to stand up together. I feel incredibly fortunate that my congressman is one of the most effective, respected, literally battle-tested representatives that any community in America has at this moment when we need him the most. And he only have 218 votes. And so I met some of my neighbors saying, hey, if you see my comments, tell me, why doesn't he fix this? Why doesn't he fix this? Oh, no way. It's causing me a lot of anxiety. And even I'm getting it because it's like, why didn't you vote against Pete Hegseth or, why did I'm a state senator. But it is, maybe it's that our consumers' approach to democracy or social media are feeling or hope that just somebody can just like, can I just click on something or hit subscribe and they'll just take care of it? That's not going to happen. Our democracy is fragile, but it's also vital and strong because of us. And that means we have to stand up together. We can do that in many, many ways. We'll talk about those, but I want to close by just emphasizing something that Congressman Thompson said. We need to tell stories. I know during the election, and as we often do in counties like Napa and Yolo, we're great on fact-checking. We make great charts, good memes. Those are all important parts of the public dialogue. But the research, the polling, and our own really lived experience tells us one thing, and that is it is the human story. It's the personal story that moves voters, that captures the attention of the media, that causes us ourselves to reflect on what matters. And so if you do, because you do, none of us are just allies in this fight. We are all of us have something significant at stake. When you see that, please share your stories with each other, but also with us, so that we can amplify those stories, Sometimes we might even say, hey, would you be a plaintiff and attorney general on those cases? But also to help us to turn America around, because we must win the battle of public opinion in addition to winning the battle in the courts, in the battle of the nation's capital. So, looking forward to
Thank you very much. And I just want to add two things. You talked about the tie between Medi-Cal and everybody else who has healthcare, Medicare, private insurers, paying out of your pocket. It mitigates a lot of those costs. And that comes from Medicaid. And that is front and center on the chopping block in this Congress. They want to cut Medicaid. They want to cut it big. And I think it's important to note that everything has a tie back to our district. USAID, University of California at Davis has a number of USAID contracts in overseas areas, and without exception, there's a tie back to our district because of UC Davis and other agricultural areas around the country. So if there's a USAID program helping farmers in some impoverished area learn how to grow corn, chances are the majority of that seed is grown right here, and there's farmers here that benefit from that. If they're using farm equipment to do it, there's a high likelihood that that farm equipment is made right here, and there's farm equipment folks who are benefiting from that. So it is all tied right back here at home. And I guess the thing that's kind of been overlooked in all of this discussion so far, and the information has come out this week, and that's in the Republicans' reconciliation bill. And reconciliation is not something on that placemat chart you got in the 8th grade of how a bill becomes law. That's a whole different deal. The reconciliation is a way by which to create headroom in a budget so you can do other things that you want to do. And they are working overtime to create that headspace. And it's mostly because of the tax cuts. The 2017 Trump tax cuts expire, part of them expire this year. And it's important to remember that, a lot of this, the DOGE stuff, was we need to save money, we need to find waste, fraud, and abuse, our debt is too high. Those 2017 tax cuts added $1.5 trillion to our national debt. And the overwhelming amount of those tax cuts went to the richest people in the United States of America and big corporations. So it wasn't working people, it wasn't from the bottom up, from the middle out. It was a gift of, it was a credit card deposit on that went to the richest people. So they're going back through reconciliation so they can do their budget bill this year. And there's a big fight in the Congress. The House wants to do one bill, put all the Trump stuff in it. The Senate wants to start with, I believe, national security and defense, and then circle back for the tax cuts later. And they're having that fight right now. But the important thing to note, if they do the tax stuff now, or they do it later, that $1.5 trillion that went to the national debt, it's now grown to $4.5 trillion. And if you add all of the things that this current president promised in regard to tax cuts during the campaign, it's another $15 trillion to the national debt. We've got some folks with microphones. Where are they? Okay, one here and one there. If someone has a question, raise their hand. Let's start right there. Tracy, you're close. Alex, you see over here?
Oh, that one works.
Right there, against the wall.
Hello, Mike. Thank you very much for being here, and thank you for all the good work you do in Congress. I'm going to use my teleprompter. Benjamin Franklin had it right in 1787 when he responded to Elizabeth Howe. We're a republic, if you could keep it. And each individual sees things through their own lens. It's clear to me that we're watching a coup d'etat happen right in front of us. And with little resistance and no guardrails. So you as our congressman sit in a number of pivotal committees, and I'll name a couple. House Ways and Means Committee, the Army Caucus, the Coast Guard Caucus, the National Guard Caucus, the Purple Heart Caucus, thank you very much. Military Veterans Caucus, the Defense Communities Caucus, Law Enforcement Caucus, I can name several more, and that's great work. From where do you sit at the table with the leaders of all stripes, military leaders of all stripes, and congresspeople? Who amongst you is going to stop this coup d'etat?
That's an excellent question. And I can tell you that I'm going to work nonstop on stopping it. And I outlined in the beginning the 3 pillars of this effort to do it. One is in the Congress, and remember, that math thing, that math can be tested. We don't have the numbers. It takes 218 votes to pass the bill in the House. It takes 51 votes in the Senate, but it takes 60 votes to bring a bill up in the Senate for a vote. So we're at a disadvantage there. But there are a lot of things that we can do. By authoring legislation, by sending letters, by doing, there's a procedural motion that we can do, we've done that already, that requires the Secretary of the Treasurer to answer questions on what data was accessed, what data was vulnerable, etc. So we know more about it. Now, the likelihood of any of that passing is slim to none, and when they say slim's already left town. And there's no chance that this president would sign any of that. But by doing those bills, by sending those letters, we're able to juxtapose the issue and what we're doing against what they're not doing, and to let the public know that there are things to do. And we only need 3 Republicans in either house to flip, and we can have some success. So the more that the court of public opinion speaks up, the more the likelihood is that some of those will fold and come on board to help the American people. If not, it just shows the American people the extent of the problem. I mentioned the second pillar, and that's the court cases. There's over 90 court cases that have been filed, and as I said, we're making headway in those areas. And that's important. And then, again, the court of public opinion. And I mentioned the bird flu and the nuclear safety people. Also, public parks, the national parks. You know, they fired 1,000 park people. Guess what? People were going away for ski week, or getting ready to go on Easter, whatever else. They brought those back. And that was a direct result of hearing from the public. And that needs to keep going. And then, most obviously, we're less than 20 months away from a midterm election, and we need to win that midterm election.
No, there's nice to see you, Congressman Thompson. And I'm from the college, you may remember, teach there. So while everything's on fire, my concern is, and our concern at the college is, we're a college, of course, all community colleges serve the most underserved students. And part of that are our learning communities that focus on, those bad words now, DEI, and our Plant Day program, Moja, all of those. And we did receive a letter from the Chancellor's office about the Dear Colleague letter that was sent out to colleges. And my question is, how many layers in California are we protected, I should say, from being able to serve our students properly?
I'm going to ask Kristen to take that. He has an extensive background in community college administration.
I was vice chancellor of the community college system vice chancellor of the community college system for California. And on Friday, the U.S. Department of Education issued a dear colleague letter. That's their preliminary concern, which is very concerning to everyone, which is that it's basically ordering schools and colleges and universities to cease and desist from anything that has to do with their characterization of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so it was this week then that the chancellor of the community college statewide said, here's what we've been told, here's how to start thinking about it. So we are, the litigation is on the way on this provision as well. And we're going to be faced with these kinds of choices over and over and over again. And so we already have Proposition 209 and other policies the voters passed year that actually make California less DEI focused than many other states. We just have we've called our programs what they're supposed to be, even though they didn't have a racial or a gender dimension to them, but we called them what we wanted so people felt and saw themselves in them. So this is going to be contested. And the federal government their ability to impose this on states and our communities is going to be one of the issues that is challenged legally. But it's a really important marker for all of us, whether you're in community colleges or in a winery or in a hospital or any part of our society, is that we're going to be spending many, many months dealing with exactly these moral dilemmas. Intentionally so, where the administration will say to us, we'll save Medi-Cal we'll save dental benefits for Medi-Cal. You just have to agree that you are going to affirmatively not serve any undocumented families anymore. And then we will be left in a position in California for what do we do? Now our moral clarity, our ethics, our integrity is going to be under question. So we're all going to be grappling with this repeatedly because they know what they're doing. They want us to feel both powerless, but they also want us to feel like we don't have a moral center. If they can force you over and over and over again to sort of leave behind the things that you care about the most, the values that you've grown up with that are central to your community, you do that 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 times, their hope is that you will have lost all moral center at all. Sort of the same way that we've gone through with getting rid of the idea that there's something called facts. But that didn't just happen overnight. And so we have 2 things to deal with here. One is to fight the individual fights, but also second, to stick together and to also have grace with each other as we're all trying to grapple, whether it's your local health clinic or your local college with it. But we have to stand together and fight, and we also have to understand this incredible emotional, psychological, community, and moral challenge that we are all already feeling, and that part is only going to get worse. And that's why I just want to emphasize that if you look at the history of coup attempts and authoritarians who succeeded and what have you, that there are very, 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 very few cases where they were stopped or overturned by actions of public officials or newspaper columnists or talk show hosts. At some point, it has to be the people speaking. That our leaders in Washington and elsewhere, they have to do everything they can to buy us some time to make the case crystal clear, so that we can make the case crystal clear and find those moments. Like the Women's March did in 2017 was one example. But find those moments where the people can speak through their actions and their words collectively. That's our only hope for the real win.
And thanks for bringing out the importance of facts in regard to a DEI question, because one of the most appalling things I've seen lately is for a president of the United States to go on television and say that tragic plane crash at National Airport as a result of DEI employment. It is absolutely a false flag, it's BS, and it's nonsense, and it is destructive, and it's not factual.
Hear, hear.
it's difficult for them to roll over to Trump, but they do it because they're afraid of losing election. You must know a handful of these people personally who might just need a little push over the edge. Maybe they're not going to run next time. Maybe they're in a close district where a Democrat could win. Is there a way that you could convey the information to us so we could do a pressure
Great question. And I came home on Thursday night, and between Thursday night and your question, it's the 7,452nd time I've been asked. It's more complicated. It's not a yes and no. It's much more complicated than that. I just saw, before we started the meeting, I got a news report from the Hill where 3 Republican members of the House came out against the Republican bill. Now, so somebody's pushing back a little bit right now. I don't know what that means. One of them was a colleague from New York, and they have a similar interest as we do in Napa, and that was that terrible cut on state and local taxes that cost our district about $18,000 per taxpayer. It was a hit on us, and New York got hit also. And so there's a group of them that are trying to work to leverage a better package for the state and local tax write-off. So it could have been that. I don't know yet. But I want to just let you know how difficult this is. During the confirmation of the new Secretary of Defense, there were a lot of allegations, and some would say factual data, suggesting that he had some problems with women and alcohol. And there was one very outspoken Republican U.S. Senator against him, Joni Ernst from Iowa. She is by no stretch of the imagination liberal. I don't even think she falls into the moderate category. She's retired military, and she was sexually abused when she was in the military. She was from day one against him. And if you watched any of the confirmation hearings, it held up the whole time. In her conference, in a room with her Republican Senate colleagues, I understand that she was told, you either vote for him or we'll primary you in your election. The next day, she came out and supported him. Something similar happened to Bill Cassidy from Louisiana. Medical doctor, good guy, served in the House with him. He and I have done a number of pieces of legislation together. He was a little concerned about the nominee for the Secretary of Health and Human Services. Just a little bit. And because it was facts that you're talking about. And he asked in the hearing some very specific questions about vaccinations. And Kennedy pretty much told him to go flat right. And he was very outspoken against Kennedy's history in this regard. The next day, he came out and announced that he was going to vote for him because the vice president had promised him that they would work with him on vaccines. So it is a real tough one right now. There are a lot of Republicans who are afraid of him and are afraid that they were going to get primary. But that goes back to the court of public opinion. If we do our job and we let folks know how bad these things are, how serious these things are, we can turn it on those districts that you mentioned that are marginal districts and put some pressure on some of those folks, and maybe we can get some of them to flip. So that's going to be part of our effort going forward. Yeah, I'm not picking them anymore. You guys each have a side of the room. You go to somebody who wants a question. Ladies first.
Okay, hi, I'm 80 years old, and I live on Social Security as an income, which I had to take early so I don't get the full income. I lost my job as a senior. That's my first part of my question. My second is, I on an almost weekly basis, sign letters to you and other members of Congress to not cut Social Security. Will Social Security income be cut by this administration?
I am 100% against any cuts to Social Security. More important, I think it needs to be enhanced. There hasn't been Social Security reform and a meaningful enhancement to Social Security in over 50 years, and that's just wrong. It's insurance. You bought it, you paid for it. Anybody here have insurance? Anything other than Social Security? Anybody here who has insurance paying the same that you paid 50 years ago? It needs a lot of work. It needs to be embellished, and cutting it is absolutely the wrong way to go. We have like 300,000 people in our district living on Social Security, and I get it. In some instances, it's the only income that somebody has. And if not the only, it's a big part of their disposable income. And the other thing that often gets overlooked in the Social Security discussion is the economic impact that Social Security has on a community. The likelihood is there are probably not more than 2 or 3 of you who take your Social Security check, if you're getting Social Security, and deposit it in a secret account in the Cayman Islands. The likelihood is that you spend it, and you spend it right here. You make your car payment, you buy gas, your house payment, utilities, groceries, clothes, maybe go to a movie, maybe go out to dinner. So every Social Security dollar that comes into our county or our district or any other district in the United States of America multiplies multiple times across that area. It is just foolish for them to even talk about cutting Social Security or to privatize Social Security. And the privatization of Social Security has long been an issue for that side. And there's Republican members right now in the Congress who want to privatize Social Security. It would be a disaster. One bump down, as you were talking about California's income, one bump down and you're wiped out.
Hey, my question is, will the Supreme Court choose to defend all of Americans and the Constitution, or is there a chance that they will take that route, or they'll defend that man?
So there's probably no one here will be surprised. The majority of the members of the Supreme Court would not have been my choice. But I think that they choose the Constitution over the individual when push comes to shove. I don't believe that we're in a constitutional crisis today.
Congressman, I was going to ask you a question about reconciliation and how successful the fractured Republican caucus is likely to be with only 218 votes. But you've addressed that, and you've addressed some of the dynamics there. I came of age during the Vietnam War. I'm a little younger than you, so I was too young to serve, but not too young to ditch junior high school and high school and go out into the streets for moratoriums against the Vietnam War. This is maybe a question for you and maybe for the senator as well. What is it going to take, and what is the leadership that you are going to exert to get us into the streets, actually making a meaningful
Of public opinion, maybe I should have been a little bit more direct. We need to get out in the street. And people need to hear that. And not just in Napa, not just in Santa Rosa, not just in Davis and Woodland, but everywhere. And that's why it is so important to have these meetings, to talk about these things, to raise these issues. People need to know what's on the line. That's why it's important for you to tell your story. If you're impacted by this, we need to know what it is. You don't have to put your name on it. Let us know what the problem is. Let us know how you're being harmed so we can talk about these things. And other people in similar situations will realize that, hey, that's me. I'm just in a different district and I could be next. Because that's what it's going to take. It's going to take a lot of loud voices and a lot of insistence that they stop this. And I already gave you 3 areas where we've already seen some change. Nuclear safety people, the bird flu stuff, and the national parks.
I don't think the Democrats did anything with that. Let's be honest, they realize they screwed up. Well, we got to see something.
Actually, I just wanted to add that I think of the core development community right now as a basketball court. You got to get out there and run back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. There's an opposing team, and elbows are going to get thrown, and we have to throw some, and so then we got to do a fake foul, or do whatever it takes in order to win. Look, the frustrating part, and we all feel it. I feel it here in California, that someone should be organizing all of this. Yeah. None of us just agree to, at the end of this meeting, we'll have a checklist and we'll make it all happen. And as a student of social movements, that's rarely how they occur. That in very few places in the world will large groups of citizens of any country come out either to protest or a national day of strike where we withhold our labor, where we don't buy anything for a few days. Things that require sacrifice as part of our voice, not just our opinions, but backing it up with our own actions. That in the case of the civil rights movement, the farm worker movement, the Civil War and Reconstruction, as well as in virtually every other democratic society on the planet. The hard part is that those happen organically often. And they do have leaders, but often not the leaders that you expect. And in the civil rights movement, there were recognizable leaders that we could turn to and say that this is a rally organized by this group or whatever. But that was over so many years, and we are only weeks into this moment. And so, I don't know exactly what advice to give, but I know what I'm doing, which is my antennas are up every morning. I'm not doom scrolling anymore. I did that for a couple of weeks on my social media. Oh my God, one more thing, one more thing, one more thing. I'm not doing that anymore. Instead, I'm just scanning. Is today the day? Is there some signal that some significant movement is about to happen today? Because if it is, I'm not going to my regular job. I'm showing up. It's not satisfying because I want to be the agent of it all. I want to make it happen. Like, who's going to? I'll show up to the club or to the Rotary or to do it. But I don't. The power of collective action is in the collective. It is not just in us as individuals making it occur. And so while that part's frustrating, I think it will happen. These moments will occur, and then the question will be on us: are we ready to show up? Will we be there? If someone's knocking at the door looking for your coworkers in your office building, can you open it if there's no search warrants? If someone says today is someone that you respect and you think might generate more than 18 people on the town square, says today is the day we're doing a national strike, will you participate? That's for each of us to decide, but if most of us don't do it, we will not prevail. And so there won't be an answer coming out tonight that it's next Thursday. It's the social movement, but that's the skill we need to be building, is sensing and knowing. In some sense, the Women's March was like this. Most people thought the Women's March would not be a big deal. That it would be good to go out and I'll show up and my friends are going. And then that morning, as people were looking in their neighborhoods and watching pink hats go by, or they were on Facebook or whatever, people started to post about it. Many, many, many more people showed up by the late part of the morning than were there in the early part of the morning. because it felt like maybe this moment is a breakthrough. Now, it did not end the administration, it did not solve everything. But moments like that are when we say the court of public opinion, moments like that are where we demonstrate our collective power, and we do. That moment did put a halt to many, many worse things that could have happened. And so all I would urge us is to keep those antennae up, and then ask yourself in advance, will I show up? I know I will be will too.
And the other thing, to please remember, to tee that opportunity up, get involved with local community groups. Because local community groups have their fingers on the pulse, they're watching this stuff, they're working with other community groups. So get involved, and those opportunities will present themselves.
February 28th, boycott retail.
Hello, I apologize. My name is Erin. I'm a little nervous. I'm a resident in Napa. First, let me say thank you, Congressman, Senator, for being here. And thank you to our wonderful hosts, Crossroad Community Church, who are allowing us to use their building. I had prepared another question to ask, but then I saw something early this morning so disturbing that I felt it needs to be addressed here. And I apologize in advance for any mispronouncing that I might do. This beautiful little girl, her name is Jocelyn Rojo Garanza. Jocelyn Rojo Garanza passed away on February 8th, 2025, after fighting for her life in the hospital for 5 days. It wasn't because she had been sick. It wasn't because of some unpreventable accident. It was because she had been subjected to endless bullying by her classmates. They told her that ICE would be coming for her family and she would be alone. Jocelyn Rojo Garanza attempted to take her own life. And after 5 days in hospital, she was welcomed into the arms of our Creator. This is the direct result of the hate and the vitriol of Donald Trump, J.D. Vance, and Elon Musk. Their hate, their lies, their ignorance, their abject cruelty towards their fellow human beings has been given a national platform. And people, children, are now dying as the direct result of this. I'm a teacher. I love my job. I love my students. I love my families that I work for. I consider it one of the greatest honors and my great privilege to shepherd our future generations into adulthood. I teach my students that words have consequences, and I have zero tolerance for any kind of bullying in my classroom. I hold my students accountable for their words and their actions as is appropriate. We are now seeing in our country the consequences of hate speech and demonization of groups of people. It has become more and more clear that this administration is hell-bent on destroying our country and making it into Trump and Elon's playground. They are bullies of the greatest and most dangerous order, and action must be taken now to stop the assault on the American people and the global community at large. My question for you, Congressman, Senator, is how many more beautiful, vibrant, innocent souls like Jocelyn Rojo Garanza will be extinguished before we call this threat what it is and stop Donald Trump and the rise of fascism in our country.
leaders lie. It's not right that leaders bully. And it's something that we as Americans should not tolerate. There's got to be something, be kind. And this administration is not kind. And as you point out, the lies are harmful, they're dangerous. Look no further than Ohio when this guy said that the Haitians were eating the next door neighbor's dogs. Something that was just an absolute lie. And Haitians were beaten up and harassed and bullied. It happens all the time. We need to be toning it down, and we need to make sure that we let people understand that they need to be moral leaders, they need to lead by example, and sometimes they just need to keep their mouth shut.
Working? I have a really loud voice. My name is Gigi Castro. I'm a school psychologist with the school district. I hear you, my friend. I know it's been really tough. I don't think people understand how dangerous Elon Musk is. He is from South Africa. I am from South Africa. I was raised in a white supremacist country where we were separated from anybody who was not white. And we were taught that the white race was superior. If black people were to come into white neighborhoods, they had to have pass. My nannies, I didn't know it at the time, I was 11 when I left, they would call my parents or any nanny that worked in a white home, they would call us Master Silver. They were taught to be subservient to white people. And I hate that this is now happening in our country. And then, yes, to see all these Latinos to come to school and they're scared because they don't know if they're going to go home to parents. I'm sick of it. For 8 years, they have called us rapists. They have made fun of our leaders. I just don't know where to begin, but this is not okay. Like, he wants to turn us worse than it was in South Africa, because as a woman, I am DEI. Yes. We all are women. And this is not okay. This is not okay. And to my LGBTQ+ friends, I love you and I hope that you just stay safe.
Thank you. That's why it's so important that we're here. That's why it's so important that we do the things we're talking about. We need to make sure that we don't allow them to turn us on against each other. We're all Americans. We're all here. We're all human beings. We all deserve dignity and respect. And we need to make sure that we enforce
that. Excuse me. What I want to say is, I've heard a lot about how Democrats right now do not have enough votes to get things done. And I want to say, when Barack Obama became president, the Republicans did not sit around and do nothing. We saw the birth of the Tea Party, which gave rise to MAGA, and we are sitting here acting like we don't have people filling the rafters of this space right now all over the country. I mean, look at this. What more do you guys need to go out and do something other than what lawyers do? I didn't vote for you to be a lawyer. I voted for you to go out there and get stuff done and to do it as loud as necessary. I want to see you guys lock yourselves to the doors of Congress and say nobody's getting out and nobody's coming in until we act like the law is something in this country.
Thank you. I'm glad you didn't vote for me because I heard you. You had your question. You had your statement. I'm glad you didn't vote for me to be a lawyer because I'm not. And the whole theme of us being here tonight and everything else we're doing across the country at events just like this is to make sure that we build up that opposition. It wasn't Republican members of Congress who didn't have the votes who started the Tea Party. That was an organic movement that started here and blossomed. But I think you do raise one good point, and that is for people who say, you know, we elected this man president, and he's doing just what we wanted him to do. Remember back when Barack Obama was elected, it was Mitch McConnell, the Republican leader of the Senate. The first thing he said, the first words to come out of his mouth, is for the next 4 years, my job is to make sure he doesn't get a single thing done. And if you elect the people who go to Washington to get things done, that's certainly not in that mold. And you can't change the facts that you're required to have a certain number of votes in order to do legislation. Short of those votes, we can do the things that we're doing. Organizing such as tonight, doing the court stuff, doing the legislative stuff, talking up the idea of people speaking out and winning in the court of public opinion. I know it doesn't end this thing immediately. I know you're looking for an immediate answer. You're not going to get an immediate answer. It's not going to happen. It's not like TV. The guy on the white horse isn't like men. This is us. This is our country. This is our democracy. And don't count on one person in Washington, in Napa, in Vallejo, or in Texas to fix it. We have to fix it. We have to take our country back.
Also, I've got some comment cards, people that don't want to ask, and I'm just going to read one of them. And it's, does California have a plan when Medicaid is cut? And if you have a question you want us to read or want to ask, we do have comment cards in the back.
Yes, we have a plan for the many ways in which Medicaid or Medi-Cal here is going to get cut, and they are all devastating. There is no, the reason I said earlier with the attacks on the state of California as a society and as an economy that's governing. The purpose of that is to knock us out from under our knees so that we can stand up for others. So we can stand up for ourselves. And so when I say that the federal tax plan or the tariffs and the deportations or the Medicaid cuts, they are designed to take California off the board. So we're so busy trying to just stay above water that we cannot fight. And it is why the legal strategy is critical, but it is why we're also, we will pull out all the stops for the Medi-Cal effect. We're not going to take the line down. And we're going to have a strong ally in the Congress to protect Medicaid funding. And we have already preemptively sued on several of these fronts with other states. We are building alliances with many other red states who depend on Medicaid even more than we do for their basic health care. So we're finding some strange bedfellows to be able to join the fight and to make the court case too. So yes, we are making contingency plans for severe cuts to Medi-Cal, especially for the most vulnerable populations. But those plans involve mainly fighting back because we won't have the revenues to be able to just backfill. We're not as big as the federal government, so we have to fight and we have to win on the streets. And we will only do that, I think, if we're able to build this national coalition of other states that are going to be the same way. The answer is that's most other states. So yes, tune in, but don't. At the early stages of this crisis, a couple of my colleagues in the legislature said, don't worry, we're the fifth largest economy in the world. We will just take care of it. And I desperately wish that that were true. We will be able to mute the impact. We'll be able to fight back, but we have to turn the tide on all of the vitriol and the pain that is being visited intentionally to destroy us as a state and destroy everything.
Some of the biggest Medicaid recipients, just in our state, are Republican districts. And then that's going to be important in your fight, because for every congressional district that is a Medicaid congressional district, you're going to have a senator and at least one assemblyman there. So they could be allies. So I agree with you. Don't offer to save the day with state funding. Hold these guys' feet to the fire, because doing that could also pressure the Congress member in that red district to side with us as well.
Hey, Congressman. My name is Diego Sanchez, and I came here to talk about some of the things I have seen and I want to see fixed in our country. According to a recent study, reported that about 66% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck, meaning the vast majority of people, in our country that are workers. And a lot of these workers are living off of minimum wage, $15, $20 an hour. You expect people to live in this economy with housing costs on the rise, with food on the rise, and it's not looking like it's about to go down? It's ridiculous. I think like our basic human needs is housing, finding shelter, food, and we can't afford that with $20 an hour. And I guess my question was, what policies can you introduce that will redirect funds back to the working class? From the top back to the working class, the top 10% of America. Like raising wages or increasing tax.
I agree with you. That's why it's so important that we fight hard against this reconciliation bill and this upcoming tax cut, because that unwinds a lot of the things that we were able to do during the last administration. And one of the things that really jumps out is the expansion of the child tax credit. That measure, that was part of the Inflation Reduction Act, cut U.S. child poverty in half. I don't think there's ever been a program that I was associated with where I could say it cut childhood poverty in half or anything close to that good. And they let that expire. They would not extend that. So that's one example and why it was so important. If you remember on the campaign trail, one of our candidate was talking about building the economy from the middle out rather from the top down. It doesn't trickle down. Trickle-down economics doesn't work. That's one of those fake fact businesses. So we need to work from the middle out to make sure that working people have the resources they need to live a respectable, safe life, and that their kids have an opportunity to go to school, to get educated, and to improve their lives as well. So believe me, I'm on the front line on the tax fight. I'm what they call the ranking member and the top Democrat on the tax subcommittee, and we will be fighting hard for that.
This is all one part. So in California raised its minimum wage in many sectors a lot, actually, in the last several years, for exactly the reasons that you mentioned. And all of that is being wiped out, not by wage decreases. Employers are mostly complying with the law. But if your wages went from $12 an hour to $20 an hour, but your energy bill, because the president is shutting off our ability to do wind energy in California, we're trying. If your food bill, thanks to tariffs and a lack of anyone to work in most of California agriculture, is shooting through the roof. If there's no more housing because the cost of lumber from Canada, thanks to tariffs, is out of reach of anybody being able to build housing, then all the progress that we have made in improving wages so that Californians could grapple with what was already, as you say, crippling cost of living with massive insecurity, what we're facing now is much, much worse. And so our fight has to be to turn back the administration, because this is already, in just a few weeks, the worst administration in the history of America for the middle class. And we must turn back those policies, all of them, because more than half of Americans are already housing insecure. A large portion are food insecure, and that's especially true here in California. So we have to do both. We can continue our progress towards improving wages in California, but let's make no mistake about it. All of that progress has been and will be erased if we don't defeat these policies that are radically driving up the cost of everyday living for human beings.
And maybe more than just middle class. I've got some poll numbers here. The new poll numbers for right track, wrong track was in January, 41% of the American people thought this administration was on the wrong track. Today it's 51%. And 53% in this poll say the economy is terrible. And this was the economy that was going to improve on day one. You know, the eggs, the butter, the gas, all that.
Hello, my name is Mars. I'm an LGBTQ youth, bred and born here in California, and this is the only place I've ever known. I think I can say on behalf of the youth population of not just California, but also the country as a whole, that we are terrified of how we will continue living here, the way that our government is destroying itself and going after my community. And I just want to know, what will you do to help protect us?
Let me say first, your community is my community. And most of my adult life, I've lived with, up until a decade ago, 0 civil rights, 0 rights to be protected from being fired or evicted, or to walk safely down the street. The terror is very real. And one of this administration's day one actions, which had nothing to do with eggs, nothing to do on day one, was an executive order on gender ideology, I think you called it. But really, it was an executive order to erase the existence of transgender Americans. Now, we can, many of us will disagree about bathrooms and sports and other things. This is a lively democracy for us to debate. But to simply order every single federal agency to post, remove any reference to transgender kids or adults, and to erase any record that they ever existed, was the opening day quality by this administration. And of course, it was a day with deportations and so many other attacks on everyone in America. And so maybe some people didn't even notice what had happened. But we have to speak up. We have to stand up. We are definitely fighting back in California on this issue. Because the fear that you are feeling is very, very real across the whole community, not only transgender Americans. Because as we've seen now, Pride Month is being erased, which is a small, it's a party, it's a moment of celebration and recognition, and that for some reason has garnered the attention of the President of the United States that we just cannot have that anymore in the U.S. Department of Agriculture or any other federal agency. We know what's coming. That's always the signal of what's going to happen next. Tomorrow, today and tomorrow, we are observing commemorating the constitutional and moral tragedy of the Japanese American internment. We know exactly where this leads when we don't speak up, when we don't stand up, and when we don't fight back. So you are not alone. California is with you. I am with you, and we will fight back. And I will also tell you that the polling, the focus groups, everything else, and even most election results show most Americans are also with us. Even when we don't agree on every single public policy. And we don't agree on every single policy, that's not the point. In America, people do believe in a diverse community, in inclusion, and the right to be able to fight and argue about all the issues. And when I first came out of the closet in 2006, my former assistant city manager, Carol Richardson, here, she was in the room. In that moment, I didn't know what was going to happen. There was no LGBT elected officials in the region. I've never been one in the Senate. And I was afraid of the pitchforks and the torches and what might happen. And it was a tough few days. But you know what I watched during that time was that people's hearts, Americans' hearts in my own community, were true and just. Even if they didn't know exactly how. Their better angels were there somewhere. We have to, as Americans, find that again and inspire that in each other, and rebuild that sense of common purpose and common place. And so we will be fighting, but this is also one of the reasons why we have to tell our stories. And this is one area that's the most important because the specific agenda has been to erase us entirely from existence, from the history books, and from the law. So I will be doing that for you and hopefully with you, and I hope everyone in this room will join us in making sure that our community is protected and that we continue to be protected and be thrive.
Thank you very much. I want to thank everybody for coming tonight. Please, let's keep the fire burning. We need to make sure our stories are told. We need to make sure we plug in the local community organizations. We need to keep this thing going for the next 20 months, and then we need to win back the House. You're going to be instrumental in that. We've got to stop these folks. So thank you all for being here. I want to remind you that there's some booths in the back of the room in the foyer. They've got some great information. Please check them out. Maybe you've got something there of interest to you. Maybe it's a group that you'd like to work with. So thank you all very, very much.